Matt Gajtka along with Bart Logan here at Pittsburgh's Consol Energy Center as the NHL Draft has wrapped up after day 2, rounds 2 through 7 just taking place. And Bart, just like yesterday, so much to talk about with regards to the USHL. We had some teams that did exceedingly well as far as the USHL is concerned, getting players selected. National team program strong as well. What are some of the guys that stand out to you? Let's look actually at Kevin Waugh of the Lincoln Stars first, as the leading scorer in the USHL, really showed what he can do, and he ends up getting drafted by Anaheim.
Absolutely. One of 3 players from the USHL drafted by the Anaheim Ducks. And Kevin Waugh, well, if you followed the USHL this season, there's no way you could have missed Kevin Waugh. A record-breaking season for the USHL in its Tier 1 history. 54 goals scored, 50 assists, 104 total points in just 59 games. A terrific, very shifty, very dynamic forward there that could really end up being a steal for the Anaheim Ducks in a draft that, some people said isn't really high on high-end offensive talent. Kevin Waugh just absolutely oozes it there for the Ducks. And when you look at the other players that they added from USHL rosters, guys like Brian Cooper and, of course, Nick Kerdelis, a player from the national team program who knows his way to the net as well. That looks like it's a nice little foundation there set in Anaheim. Oh, and don't forget Andy Walensky, USHL Defenseman of the Year, a third-round pick from last season.
Anaheim, one of 3 NHL teams that seem to continue their recent trend of drafting USHL players, as it was both Anaheim as well as Washington and Calgary that really snapped up some guys from this league. And Calgary had another good draft. Talked to Jim Cummins, and he was impressed, always impressed by the USHL and level of competition. And same deal with Washington, as they draft national team players 1, 2, 3 actually in a row there for a bit. So teams looking to this league for sure for high-end talent. And we talked about Kevin Waugh, one of those guys. What about John Gillies, though, a goaltender that we raved about during the season, saw him at the top prospects game, and he ends up getting chosen today.
Oh, yeah, you talk about high-end talent. He is literally high-end talent. 6'3" or 4 3/4, as he corrected us, and not 6'5", but he's a terrific goaltender. Great head on his shoulders, too. A nice, mature kid. You could understand. You could just see how happy he was there to be taken by the Calgary Flames. Talked about one of his heroes as a kid growing up, watching Mika Kiprusoff in net. He's going to have a chance to get a look at him up close in person this season. He'll be heading over to Providence next season, get a chance to take the #1 spot there in net there for the Friars. It's going to be great for his development, great for the league. Going in the 3rd round for Calgary, another team that you mentioned that picked a lot of USHL players. One player that you were pretty close to as well, Matthew DeBlau.
For sure, DeBlau going in the 7th round out of Muskegon, out of the Lumberjacks program, going to Michigan State, and now chosen by the Calgary Flames. And DeBlau, one of the guys that put up some numbers this year, made himself known for sure, along with Gillies, along with Waugh. But there are players who maybe have slid under the radar for the last couple of seasons or just this past season that still were noticed by NHL teams. And one of them was Jacob Slavin from the Chicago Steel. I know you like him. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you think he can bring to the table?
Absolutely. I think that might be one of the steals of the draft. Certainly a 4th-round pick going to the Carolina Hurricanes. They also picked up Colin Olson, goaltender for the National Team Development Program. But Jacob Slavin, you've heard me rave about him all season long. A great, good-sized defenseman that really kind of did go under the radar on a Chicago team that certainly struggled this season, but they made a lot of progress compared to last season. And Jacob Slavin, on a defense that was very underrated, really rose above the cream of the crop there. He's got great instincts. He doesn't ever seem to get himself caught out of position. He uses his size well, not an overly physical player, but he really he does not make mistakes. And he's going to be heading to Colorado College next season. They know a thing or two about developing good defensemen, and he could end up being a couple years down the road. I think he's a very, very solid 2nd pairing, possibly 1st pairing defenseman, a guy that can quarterback the power play if need be, and certainly isn't going to be any sort of problem anywhere on the ice. He's really safe in all 3 zones. I think that's going to be a great pick for Carolina, and a player that didn't really get a whole lot of respect from some NHL scouts, didn't show up on NHL Central Scouting's final rankings, but he ends up going in round number 4 today.
Well, as you can tell, we could talk all day about some of these USHL guys who heard their names called here at Consol Energy Center. Here are some of the numbers, though. 28 players who skated at least one game in the 2011-12 season in the USHL were selected today. Then we also had 10 players from previous seasons, 10 USHL alumni, and 9 draft picks from this past spring, whether it be entry draft or futures draft. So, Bart, it's just the numbers continue to add up. I think 28 matches last season's total as far as alumni from the previous season being taken in the NHL draft. And USHL outpacing, in fact, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League and really holding its own with some of those leagues north of the border that you might hear a little bit more often than the USHL on the national scope.
And certainly, and when you talk about the national scope, a city that you can't talk about hockey without bringing up is Chicago. They've been really putting together great youth programs, youth systems. And one of the really nice stories about the USHL and the NHL draft this season, Vince Hinestroza of the Waterloo Blackhawks, grew up from Chicago, played in that Chicago Mission youth program, and he's taken by the Chicago Blackhawks, number 6 overall. You could just see him, and we're speaking to him there in the interview press room, and he was just beaming there as he got to put on the Blackhawks jersey. Not a big difference there from his Waterloo Blackhawks jersey. Of course, he's going to be back in Waterloo next season. As he said, their goal is to make the Clark Cup and win it this season. They were just one win away this past season, and boy, when you look at that kid, when you look at how he came on last season, he's going to be a very tough player for teams to handle next season in USHL.
Well, you talk about Hinestroza, dreams coming true for him, dreams coming true all over the place here at the Consol Energy Center. That's the best part of being here for us, we think, just to see the excitement on these guys' faces as they make that next step. And it's been a pleasure bringing you all of the developments, all the action here on USHL.com. Please stay tuned to the website for more coverage of the 2012 NHL Draft here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.